Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday. It's awesome to
Hello.
see you all. Thank you for joining us live. If you are hopping on now or later, if you're watching later, we took the first week off ever in a pretty long time last Saturday. So sorry if you missed our last Saturday live because there wasn't one. But this week we're back and we wanted to talk about a really important topic that's been coming up in our school district and with teachers that we work with. And we're hoping to provide some ideas around this topic of culturally responsive English language instruction. So we're going to hop right into some content today. I want to share with you the framework that we're going to be discussing around this today. And then we're going to share some practical applications and ideas on how to do this through some lesson design. So the framework around culturally responsive English language instruction has really come from a webinar that I watched on Teaching Tolerance website. And they suggested these 6 things to really consider when you're designing lessons. And I think this just applies to teachers remotely or in the classroom. The first thing is to have a responsive room environment. So as you are designing the actual virtual classroom or the classroom that students are in, to just take a minute to reflect on the identities of the children who are learning with you every single day. Think about posters and flags and images and languages represented in the room. And do your language learners see themselves in the decor of your classroom? The next suggestion is to make the curriculum relevant. And I feel like that really goes with the first one as well. When you are embedding stories and readings and different perspectives that focus on history, consider, immigration and the community of the units that you teach. This will create some opportunities for students to see themselves in the curriculum and also share stories from their own lives. And that a part of so that they can really reflect on this changing community that we're always evolving and creating. So think about that curriculum that is presented and how that windows and mirrors concept for students. Will they see themselves in it? And then also, is it an opportunity for them to look into someone else's perspective? The next recommendation is to use a variety of teaching modalities. Sometimes we end up just focusing on this when we're talking about working with English learners. And this is a really important thing. Even through virtual classrooms, we can build in movement. We can build in call and response, claps, stomps, chants, cheers, ways for students who don't understand every word can recall important vocabulary. I feel like this also includes a lot of incredible technology that allows us to do this. Tools like Immersive Reader and ThingLink and Pear Deck have add-ons that will really, really help with using a variety of teaching modalities while teaching online. When you are implementing some of these strategies, consider allowing students to teach in their native language and in English so that they're practicing both, and you're also addressing the first two, which is around that responsiveness and relevance, so that you're helping them to continue to develop their first language while learning English as a second language. The next recommendation is to familiarize yourself with cultural norms of the students in your classrooms. That way, if there's holidays that aren't on the traditional holiday calendar for your school district, you can be aware of what's happening in your students' lives. Beyond holidays, just what are the norms, especially now that we're considering being in their homes online and rather than in the classroom. There are certain traditions that students may have in their homes that will potentially affect the way that they are interacting in your virtual classroom. So based on who is in your classroom, really be aware of the cultural norms of that of those communities if you can If you're not familiar with them, I encourage you to reach out to families and the students to learn a little bit more about that as well. The next recommendation is to get to know your students' contextual skills and educational background. And that is because when we're talking about being culturally responsive, English students may or may not be coming in with some of the same backgrounds that students who have been in your classrooms all year long. For example, just assessing kids for skills that may or may not be something that they have had a chance to work with before. For example, in a classroom, if students are used to working with printed material, or are they used to like interacting with scissors? Is that a tool that they've used before? Or online, have they had an opportunity to learn how to connect and communicate with online tools such as Google Classroom prior to being in your classroom? So just consider that when you're interacting with them. And then the last one is to really distinguish between academic English and conversational English at home. Academic English is is the goal. That's what we're trying to teach English learners through our designated and integrated English language development time. And with that, it takes about 5 to 7 years to become proficient in conversational English, but it actually takes 7 to 11 years to reach proficiency in academic English. So it's important to note that that is their progress and their development and where they're at, and that it's going to take some time, but that there's to distinguish between the two. And there actually is one more, which is to be sure to honor your students' first languages. As mentioned before, find ways to bring it into the classroom and celebrate it so that they can feel really celebrated in that connection between home and school. So I'm going to drop in the chat here some resources where I got these ideas. And it really comes from best practices for serving English language learners and their families. And there's a 1-hour webinar on this that anyone who is interested in learning more about that can go ahead and share or watch the webinar. So I'll drop that in the chat. But for today, we just wanted to use that as a framework. And now I want to invite Lisa and Sarah to come back in here and let's just connect, because that was a lot of information. Is there anything from that made you think of, or an example that you've seen in the classroom when you look at those, that framework for connecting with English learners?
Well, I'm so glad you're mentioning all of this, because I have in my head the fact that Monday is Columbus Day and also Indigenous Peoples Day. And I love how you're taking this EL framework and widening our understanding to include just looking at our practices, looking at our curriculum, and not just being so narrow focused that we only see the language learner as like, I need to teach you these, that designated LD piece. So I'm just thinking about what we traditionally focus on from the curriculum around Columbus Day and the history of colonization and whatnot. And there's so many beautiful resources out there around Indigenous People Day. So I'm thinking, like, as a classroom teacher, would I be offering different perspectives around that? Like, one of my favorite resources, and I'll have to find the video and to drop as well, is Global Oneness Project. Has some beautiful short films and lesson plans to help learners understand, like, the loss of language and with colonization. And so I'm going to drop that, but I'm so glad that you've kind of widened the scope of what English language instruction can and should be. So thank you. You just, this all feels relevant to me even right now, thinking about Monday. What am I teaching in a few days?
Sarah, I think that's a great topic to get into, is the loss of culture and loss of language. And it is exemplified, unfortunately, so often through Indigenous people's loss of everything that they've had for generations. And I do love that Global Oneness video, is incredible around that. And that begins with something we can do any time of the year, is celebrating those traditions and cultures. I know I started collecting videos of the Cooking Grannies. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but there's a series of videos, which I think is a brilliant idea. And they were in Mexico, and they went to, they went to all their, the grandmothers, and started to take video of them making traditional recipes. And I think that's so important, to think of ways, how can we preserve a lot of this, and celebrate that, and pay attention to it and notice it in our students, because these are things that are normal in a lot of their lives every day. And they, I think it's good to point it out and celebrate it versus, a Eurocentric all the time, of just our idea of our celebrations and holidays. When you're ready, I'd love to show some ideas for the classroom, though.
Absolutely, and we have a question from Dana in our group chat here, just asking about how to integrate the academic piece. So this is perfect segue.
Perfect timing. That's what we want to share, an actual practical lesson that Lisa's going to put on display for us.
Okay, great. So I have a place where I like to start with students, and this is a text set, and it's something that you could take and modify in any way you want. I've continued, you see the last edit was 11 days ago, because I just found this Reading Bear resource. I'm constantly updating it with resources that I think are even better. Searching for ways to reach my brand newcomers, who are brand new to English. And how do I even know what level they're at, or where they're at versus maybe instead of doing standardized tests, I guess is what I'm saying. And although those are required to understand levels, I think it's really important to remember and always be thinking about all the strategies that I'll share and talk about are good strategies for all learners. And starting with number one, making connections with your students. I mean, I can't tell you enough of how that applies no matter what you're teaching and when you're teaching it, is to connect with the learner. So I would take this text set into the classroom and sit down one-on-one, back when we were face-to-face with students. And I would start in the top left with Learn the Alphabet. And the minute I open this link, and these are all linked up on here on the images, these are students who I would start with, Google Translate, even with my phone, to try to communicate what it is I'm doing with them. And so we would go back and forth and just share, okay, I'm going to show you how to use this. And I might even give some instructions with Google Translate, even though it was, depending on the language it was translating to, it was not always the clearest, but we could communicate through thumbs up or, yeah, I'm with you. The minute I started going through some of these, I could learn very quickly, oh yeah, I know my ABCs. I know the letters. And we would come back to this, though, and work on sounds. So I said, okay, they're a little further. They know their sounds. I would go to starting with then some word vocabulary. And most importantly, I'm taking them to YouTube. So I need to help them navigate. I can't just give them resources like this text set and say, go, you're on your own. And so I'm going to pause this here. It's going to start playing loud. There we go. And I would start going through some vocabulary with them to see where they're at in terms of maybe body parts, or maybe just colors, or fruits and vegetables. And there's more on here, just a resource for them to show them how to come back and to find these resources to play on their own later. But to start out with, I would play, let's say, the color video, and it would open up this conversation between the two of us. And then we'd start looking, and we'd leave the video and just start talking together. Show me something yellow. And then we go find something yellow. Show me something green. And just building vocabulary and connecting. Show me your favorite color. And then if you didn't know favorite, we were always translating what favorite was. And so learning a new word like that. And so I brought in favorite, not just colors. And in the same time, I'm going to be connecting with them, especially around food. I love to connect around cooking. So that was kind of nice. Now, as you work your way through this text set from left to right, you'll see that it starts to get more advanced. And you can, a lot of students I could see they've got these down up here, and I'm going to start getting down to more of, getting into a little more complicated when we're starting to put together some stories or sentences. And so it's really good to go through these. And if there's tech issues also, it's really important to show up. I think this is the one where I sometimes would have issues with Flash, and then that you have to help them how to get through those. But I also do not have people sign in and join things because it just is complicated. I only use the free portions of these websites to sort of just connect with them. And so we could go through some of these. There's only 2 that are for free on this one. And so if I go into the body section here, we just begin to have a conversation. It kind of just gives you that content to start launching from and have conversations. You could play word bingo together, a game together. You could do these games, creating words together. While it all looks really young, is challenging as your students get older. I did have this typically marked for TK5, but you can change that title and make it for anyone who's beginning to learn words. In the remote setting, this is actually working very well when you can get into small groups. Set a small group designated language learning time and just play together off of this. And this is, again, I'm going to repeat for your beginning newcomers to sort of launch from their self-tests and what levels they're at, and for you to connect with them and build that relationship with them around this. Now from here, we want to start doing that language lesson. And Kathleen, look what I'm showing. Kathleen's in our audience today. And this is a lesson that she has done in her classroom. And I think the power of this lesson in terms of working with your language learners is amazing, because, you may be reading Charlotte's Web. This is a 3rd grade lesson, and your language learners are, struggling to keep up. Now, this was a lesson. It's a whole different topic where all students were collaborating on one doc around the curriculum. And so everyone was searching for words that were not just words they didn't know, but we call them like $5 words or whatever you like to call them, like the good words, the big, juicy, meaty words. And maybe they don't know what they are. Maybe they just like the sound of them. Maybe it's a word that really got them stuck. And as I'm going through this list, what was collected, these are really hard words. This is a 3rd grade group reading this Charlotte's Web. And did you realize there were such hard words that could really stick you on? Now, working with your language learners on this is so valuable because you crowdsource this work. They're not alone collecting words they didn't know. They've got their classmates on there. And you can go through what the classmates have already put down and says, drowsed. Let's go to page 75 together. If you were in a Zoom call alone working with them, and if they had their book together, you could be like, let's find that word on page 75. Let's practice pronouncing it, because you might have heard that word in a different form. Have you ever heard of drowsy? What's a different way of saying that? Like sleepy, that's when I'm sleepy. And they can use the images, teaching them how to use the images that are created there to kind of bring meaning. Now I might do, depending on their level, if they're very, level 1 on self-testing, I might even look up sleepy and translate that. And to bring those synonyms in to help with these bigger words that they might stumble across and not know, but how to tackle them and how to come here and look for those. And then to find a word that they don't know. And you'll notice there's no students' names next to these words. Instead of really pinpointing kids and saying, what? You don't know that word? Let the kids put whatever word they want. Asparagus. Now, maybe someone put that because they like the way it sounds. Maybe someone put it because they can't pronounce it. And so letting them put whatever word they want, including your language learners, and to go through this. Some of them are really challenging. I was surprised. And then adding those images. Now, taking this lesson one step further. In our district, we use WeVideo. So you can use any tool you want, but I did this lesson with a newcomer, and I was blown away by this. Now, I was teaching the rest of the class how to make videos, and they were doing, character analysis. Well, this student was still back at vocabulary words, And instead of creating a full video about character analysis, he was going through and taking the vocabulary words from that document and creating his own video to help him with that. So as you play, you can see sedentary, and then he found a picture of what he thought sedentary meant. Now I'll get to that in just a second. How to find that picture was the hardest part about this, because how do you search for what that word sedentary? That's so hard. Together we worked on synonyms for that, and then translations of those synonyms. And then he went, oh, I have that. But then the pronunciation comes, where the student then can go to My Media and can be adding in narrate. And then the student would click narrate, and I'm going to demo it. Sedentary. I'm going to stop because that was just really quick. And he did it. He said it probably like 3 or 4 times he was practicing. It saves your recording. It puts that little sound clip there, and it puts it right there. And I can move it over. So now, oops, let me move it over right here. So now when you play it, and you'll see I needed to stretch it. Sedentary. And so as you're practicing it in your head and you see it, you can see how he could have said it multiple times and it was very helpful. Gullible. Okay, so to start, I told you finding the picture was one of the hardest parts, but one of the greatest learning sessions you can have with a student. So you're talking about gullible, getting someone to believe you. And I think that when you go to, now, if you don't have stock media and you have a different tool you could use, you could do this with Google Images, so many different ways. So gullible, what's a different way of saying that? And how do I even search for that? Sometimes people are gullible because they tell you things and get you to believe them and you believe them. And so it leads me to think of like a secret. Could that show people telling you something and getting you to believe it? Could this represent that right here, that idea? And so if I pull that down, and what was really good with this student was it wasn't so much that, look at, does that kind of show what gullible might mean? Is the girl believing what this other girl is telling her? So giving that rich context for what that word means, because it's so layered, and being able to then have him build this video out. Now I have to tell you, the student never clicked finish on this video. And at first I was like, no, make a video. And then you have a video and you can practice. You can play all your words and hear them over and over again. And it's your voice, or maybe my voice if you were struggling with pronouncing. He never published that video. And I kept coming back to him every time I'd work with him. He kept adding more words to it. And it didn't matter that it was a finished product. It was the process over it. And then we'd sit down and we'd talk about words he was collecting. And then it became not an assignment of words that he had to do, but words that he was collecting. He did end up adding some pretty loud rock music on it. So that became another lesson about how to bring down the background music to it. But in the end, this student was extremely capable of creating videos and content, creating his own help, and working on that in a way that was really beneficial to him. He taught me so much about the way he was acquiring language and creating and being creative at the same time, and doing the same work as our other students were doing. It was just a really powerful moment for me to stop searching for curriculum that I can follow lock and step, one piece at a time, and start connecting with kids and talking to them and getting to know them and helping them work through the curriculum that I was giving to them. And then thinking out loud, how can I pare it down? How can I switch this up for them to personalize that, yet also challenge them and not give them something that is too easy? I don't know if that makes sense. If you guys want to, I can stop screen sharing now. Kind of went off on a tirade there. Not a tirade, just ideas that come to you when you pause and listen and connect with those students.
Well, Lisa, like the best thing about these lessons, and you started to touch on it, is that when we are designing lessons for English learners, it's really about giving them opportunities to read, write, speak, and listen. It's not a separate curriculum. It should be supplemental to what's already happening in the classroom. And it should just be extra practice during that designated time. And that's where you're teaching the academic English versus conversational, as we kind of discussed in the beginning. So what I love about the lessons that you shared is that layering of using technology where beyond your designated time, the student found solutions for that and could use that for any of the content that they're learning. If that student moves on to middle school and high school now, they have those tools in their toolkit. So really that it's not a canned curriculum. It should be enhancing the curriculum that you're already teaching. And so if you're teaching Charlotte's Web, or if you have a designated time and you just want to build vocabulary, it should be relevant to what's already happening in the classroom, like you shared. So I love that.
You know, one piece to add to that, Sarah, I'm sorry, and then I'll be quiet finally. And I didn't say it there. The other piece to this is I love telling the students to take that text at home and play with it with your families and your parents. And a lot of times, as I've been speaking with their parents, they are trying to learn English as well. And the lessons together and having that material that was not very complicated to figure out how to practice at home together as a family and build those language skills. Although it looks like it's, you know, a low level or, you know, kindergarten, first grade level, everyone is learning at the same time and playing together and kind of having some fun with learning language. I think that providing that resource home for practice instead of just saying, read Charlotte's Web and practice, you know, let's bring it down so parents can help their child as well.
Well, honestly, Lisa, I've heard you say the word play multiple times, and I think we keep that so separate from like, you have to learn these, you know, explicit skills in order to catch up with everyone else. And it's like, these students are brilliant. Like their brain is working twice as hard. And so to bring that element of play and fun to lower the affective filter. And that's when learning is going to happen, right? Like when you genuinely feel connected or playful or not stressed at all. So I just want to appreciate you for keeping that very important layer into this work. Also, what I heard you describing too, that I just want to make sure I share out is just this idea of like strategy instruction. You know, you've provided some tools, you've connected it to the content, but really I hear you mentioning like strategies that the kids can do anytime, like using WeVideo and saying a word out loud, maybe a couple times. That's oral rehearsal. That's a strategy. Say it a couple of times until it sounds just right. Or anytime you are curious about a word, here's what you can do. So you're teaching strategies that are not just for that designated ELD time, and it's not just for that one content. But like, I really hear you introducing strategy instruction to these students and just giving them the tools and the practice on how to do that, so that it's not about what you do with them, but it's what they can do on their own when you're not with them. So important.
So I think that buy-in too of when the students are the creators and they are also being really creative while they're doing that work, having him get out of just doing it on paper and pencil and collecting words and writing them down. It felt like, not that they don't have to do that, but getting away from some of that routine. I don't want to call it drudgery but I do like that playful fun where it doesn't seem like, I gotta make a list of 10 words, you know. I think you can do this reverse, psychology of this, the work you do, and make it feel playful. Because I want to speak their language. These kids can all learn Minecraft, and they can all learn, you know, their games, and they're very motivated by them. So why not give them some of that time and space to do that, and then see what they come up with? I learned from him about the not publishing that video. I thought it was brilliant.
Mm-hmm. I saw some demo lessons as well, where the classroom just really did an incredible job at allowing the students to show their learning in English, but also they would recite it in their first language. And that part just, to me, just really enhanced the experience, because what you're teaching in that classroom is that to all students, that speaking multiple languages is something that we value, and that is a gift and something that will take you move forward. So I could just see that as a potential there as well. With the We Video, they have the words in English, but if they ended up publishing it, they could say them in their native language as well, and sharing it out, and having a partner and having the partner learn their language, the same words in the native language. Like, it's about celebrating language. And we live in a world that is much smaller now, that we can connect around the world because of technology. And we want our kids to see this as an incredible asset in the classroom and beyond, which we know it is, but we want to really create that inclusion in our lessons in the way that you just shared as an example.
Well, and Kelly, I think beyond language development, although we're talking about this, I'm going to go back to the beginning when you talked about culturally responsive teaching. Think about the audience you have in front of you. Do they see themselves reflected in the stories that you're sharing, in the content you're sharing, in the videos you share, in the images you share? How can you remember to really be bringing that culturally responsive content to your classroom in a really authentic way? How can you make the parents in your classroom a partner of that and be sharing that? I think that's really important to think about that in terms of teaching history. What points of view and perspectives are you including? Are you making sure it's not just from one centric point of view? And being really cautious about that and really thinking through that. I know that I really work hard to find videos because I love playing videos in class, but I think every student wants to see themselves in these videos and be related to that way in the examples you chose to share. So I think that's just little things that you can do to really enhance that work.
Agreed. So I think we kind of are ending where we started and looking at all of these things to consider when we are designing lessons all year long for our students. So this framework, these 7 things to really keep in mind, I just want to challenge people who are participating with us today to take a look at those 7 and think about which one do you need to spend a little time on. Maybe it's not quite designing a lesson yet. Maybe it's about familiarizing yourself with the cultural norms of the students in your classroom and spending some time. And if you do apply that together, how could you share that with colleagues? Because it's likely that they are working with students from the similar cultures. And so applying the same practices that we apply with HyperDocs and Teachers Give Teachers, if you are familiarizing yourself with cultural norms for your students, could you share that with staff? Could you share some email heads up, understanding, just making, we can't assume that everyone knows all about all the norms everywhere. So I just want to invite our viewers to look at these 7, this framework that was provided at the beginning, and choose one area to focus on maybe, and then begin there. And then we'll go into the creating a more inclusive classroom for all of the students in our classrooms.
You know, I would hope to, I love the chat, and that's why I was looking away. I've been listening to you. It's really nice to see your comments, and thank you, Vicki, so much for commenting it. I know we missed it last week too. It was so weird, like maybe we shouldn't do that again, skipping a week, because we did miss that. But yeah, I think it would be really great if you've participated in this chat, or you come and see this at a later time, to add a comment and share what best practice you're using in the classroom that's working, whether it's a big practice or something really small. And while you may not find that to be super significant, everyone else is learning from each other in this Facebook group. It's one of the most powerful pieces. And so sharing links to the work you've done, you know, I put up just a very simple text set, and you can modify it and be joining in on that conversation around this important topic. I'd love to see what you have to say and have to share.
I'm going to drop something by the end of the week because I'm working on a lesson right now and I'm so excited about it. It's for high school students who are newcomers. And we're designing a lesson for how to learn about tornadoes and hurricanes. And they're going to be creating in ThingLink. And if you haven't checked out ThingLink yet, the reason I'm excited about using that as a tool is because ThingLink has embedded in it reading, writing, speaking, and listening tools. And then it has all the accessibility built in of Immersive Reader. So as soon as that, it's just like I'm working on it. I just started planning it with a teacher on Friday, and we're teaching it next week. So as soon as I get that together, I'll put that in the chat as well for people.
That's awesome.
That's awesome. I'm having fun searching my own Google Drive for things that I've used in the past. And I think we need to put together a little collection of some favorites here.
Yeah.
Thinking about a lesson I did last year, but teaching high schoolers, newcomers as well, about how they learn language. And there's that element of input and output, kind of like you were saying, reading. When you look at reading, writing, speaking, and listening, 2 of those are coming in and 2 are going out. So helping the students consider what that looks like and what goals they might have around that. I just going to show this really quick and comparing that to in and out and just helping the students see for themselves, like, okay, what kind of input is reading and listening, and what are my strengths here, and what can I focus on? What does output look like? Okay, that's writing and speaking. What are my strengths here, and what can I work on? So I know I hear so many teachers wanting to include students in the goal setting process. And so just demystifying the process of learning a language, right? Mm-hmm. And I think this could easily be used in like a world language class. If you're, learning, Spanish or ASL, just thinking too about how do we, as English learners, learn a second language, just language development in general, and incorporates these things, and what's going really well for you and what do you still need to work on, and really rely on those strengths. If you're a great reader, how can we use that to develop yourself as a writer, that kind of thing. So it's just so fun, you guys talking about this stuff and really centering the student and their own experiences and needs. And I'm so grateful, Lisa, that you shared all those resources. You've got me thinking of new ideas, and I know that this community always shares incredible work around this topic as well. So thank you for bringing this to the surface today.
Nothing. I just really appreciate the conversation and the focus on this topic. Just small shifts and making these things happen in your classroom is the goal. And just like always, we encourage you to communicate and connect and create all week long in our HyperDoc community. And if you want to learn more, we have specific lessons in hyperdocs.co. We have free courses and lessons in there that do more walkthroughs like what Lisa just described. And, we basically take all of these ideas and build that content into the website so you can continue learning there with the resources that are there. We encourage you to sign in if you haven't done so already. If you have a topic that you really want to learn about, that you have been thinking about, or a challenge that's been happening, please share that with us as well, because it's likely that we can address that or come together and at least facilitate some discussion around solutions. That's what we're all about here in HyperDocs Facebook and on Twitter, and in HyperDocs in general, talking about teaching and learning and finding the best ways to meet the needs of all of our students in all of our different classrooms, wherever we are. So whoever you are with us today, thank you for joining us. And in the future, we'll see you again on another Saturday.
Have a good weekend.